There are two ways to do the work. The first is in written form, and the other is in spoken form. We're going to be doing a little bit of both in this course, and I want you to experience these two different ways of going through the questions and finding the turnarounds. So they're exactly the same. The process is exactly the same. There's only 4 questions, and there's only turnarounds and examples of the turnarounds. There's nothing more to the work when it's done either in written form or in spoken form. So when you're doing the work in spoken form, you can literally take the one belief at a time worksheet and just have it in front of you and go through the questions, just like you would when you were working it on your own in written form. Or you can pull up the computer screen and look at the template for the day and just go through the questions like that. It's the same thing. So the other thing that's really helpful when you're doing spoken work is to actually write down the statement that the person is questioning. So if you're coming to the session and you're going to be questioning a stressful thought, then you'll bring one statement that you're going to question. So maybe it's, I want him to listen to me. And so you give that to the other person and they write it down as well. And then you both have a copy of the statement that you're working with. This is important because what happens is the mind kind of forgets what the statement is. You're kind of exploring, answering the questions, and it's easy to forget where you are. So having a written copy of the statement is very helpful. And then the other thing is when you go through the 4 questions, when your job as the facilitator is to ask those 4 questions and to state the statement again so that it refreshes the mind of the person who's answering the questions. So it looks like this. So I want him to listen to me. Is it true? See, I used the statement, I want him to listen to me, and then I added on the question, is it true? Or I want him to listen to me. Can you absolutely know it's true? Or sometimes you can say it in terms that make sense, like you could change it to, so you want him to listen to you. Is it true? Like that. Like you're talking to the person that's doing the work. And always questions 1 and 2 are a yes or no answer. So give your client plenty of time to sort through whatever they're sorting through in their mind, but just wait for them to come up with a simple yes or a no and then move on. Same thing, question 3. So how do you react? What happens when you believe that thought? That's question 3. And so then add on what the thought actually is. So how do you react? What happens when you believe that thought that he doesn't listen to you? See how I just brought in the statement and integrated it in with the question. So how do you react? What happens when you believe that he doesn't listen to you? And then let them answer. And then question 4, who would you be without the thought that he doesn't listen to you? So that's all it is. It's very simple. And then when it gets to come time for the turnarounds, then you simply state the statement again and then ask them if they can find a turnaround. So it sounds something like this. He doesn't listen to you. How would you turn that around? What's a turnaround? Like that. And they will find a turnaround and then ask them, can you find any examples of how the turnaround could be as true or truer? And short version is, can you find any examples like that? And that's all it is. So literally, as a facilitator, the only job is to read off the prompts that are on the template. It's like having your own private secretary read you the template and then take notes for you. And that's not actually part of facilitating. Sorry to confuse you there. But it's like having your own private secretary read you the questions and then give you space to find your answers. And it's just like a very human way of doing this work. So that brings up that point that as a facilitator, there's no need for you to write down anything. Only just write down the original statement, but don't write down their answers. Their answers are for them, and just allow them to find their answers and go through their process and see what they discover on their own. and there's no need to give them any report at the end or anything like that. Whatever people discover in inquiry, it lands in their heart. And so just let that land for them. They'll take away whatever they take away, and then that's really up to them. It's not the job of the facilitator to worry about that. Another thing is give your client lots of space. If they need time to answer how do they react, just let them keep talking about how they react. And then if they get stuck in any way, like who would you be without the thought, and they don't really know, give them time. Give them time to really sit with it. And if they can't really find something clear, then ask again, ask the question again. And if they still can't get it, then just move on to the next thing, the next turnaround or whatever, the next question. The main thing is, sometimes a point of confusion for people when they're facilitating is that they kind of think like, oh, it's my job to make sure this person has a really good experience. And I want them to have lots of insights and to have some kind of a breakthrough. That's not the job of a facilitator. The job of a facilitator is just to be there with them, just to hold the space for them and allow them to find whatever they find. They may find amazing things, or they may find nothing, and that's perfectly okay. Your job is done just by asking these questions. Sometimes the person will ask you, do you see any examples? Like maybe they're just not finding something. They're free to ask you, do you see any examples? And if you see something, then feel free to share an example that comes up with you. But otherwise, you're not going to be just sharing what's coming up for you in general when someone else is doing their work. The work is an internal process, and when other people start sharing their stuff, it sometimes brings the person out of their own meditation, and that's distracting rather than supportive. So the main idea in facilitating is listening. You're there, you're asking the questions, and then you're listening to their answers. And other than that, there's not much to it. There's no need to converse, no need to be social about it. You don't have to be rigid either, but the main focus should just be these questions. The power lies in these questions. So just ask them simply and move on. Also, there's a big difference between therapy or coaching or being an advisor and being a facilitator. A facilitator just holds the space for you. A therapist, you come to a therapist or to a coach because they know something. They're knowledgeable in a particular area, and they're going to help you with their knowledge. But you come to a facilitator because you want to be held, and you want to find your own answers by going through these questions. So respect that difference, and don't feel any need to interject any kind of insights or wisdom that you may have. This is just a place for your client to find whatever they can find. Okay, so that's how you do spoken work. It's really not a big deal. If you want to be extra simple about it, simply take your paper and read the questions. Just read them and give the person time to answer. Don't have to be creative. Don't have to be like ask the most amazing question. Just forget about all that. Just ask these 4 questions. Allow them to find the turnarounds, and that's where the power of the work can be found.